Andrew McCART, IFLTV, delighted for the first time this year. And it's took me until the 21st of January to get some boxing news so I can chat to you, Mr. Dan Rafael. How are you?
I'm good. We don't need boxing news that's breaking to have a chat, though. We can do it whenever. There's
Yeah, I
always
know,
something.
but
It's
I
always
know
something to talk about.
there's always, I know, I think, yeah, I might get your favorite. I might know what I might do. I might do an episode of Dan's five favorites. I might do like favorite fight of all time, favorite fighter of all time. I
That
might
sounds
do
like
that
fun.
one day when we've got that lull.
You're like giving me homework now.
Well, listen, I'm pretty sure you know your stuff anyway, Dan. You don't need homework. Um, yeah, like I said, I've waited 3 weeks for some news to happen, and you know what? I thought, let's talk about it then. Let's talk. I know you've done an article about it, and you sort of broke the news a little bit of the potential fight between Deontay Wilder and Britain's own Derek Chisora.
Yeah.
Now, what do you know about the fight? Is it a serious fight to happen? Do you think it will happen?
Oh, yeah, that's happened. I mean, as far as I'm told, it's happening. I mean, it may not be officially signed. I mean, Derek Chisora did go on his Instagram and put up a video, which I watched, where he was like turning pages of what appeared to be a contract, signing it. Not sure if that was actually that contract, and it had like the number 50 superimposed on the screen with a pair of boxing gloves. Obviously, if you follow Derek Chisora, he's sort of been making a big thing about wanting to have his 50th professional fight be kind of a big one. You're fighting Deontay Wilder. Obviously, it may not be for the world title, but it's a pretty big fight. And so that plus I'm told by people involved that is it's agreed to, and everything's just going to paper right now. And that's that's the point where they've agreed to the terms, and they're when I use the word finalizing, they have a deal, and now it's being all made official and signed and sealed and delivered. But yeah, that fight's on the docket for April. It'll be in London. And, it was sort of interesting because if you go back, I don't know, it's got to be maybe around Thanksgiving time, for us anyway in America, like mid-November, late November, talking to Shelley Finkel, who was Deontay Wilder's manager, there had been some discussion about an Usyk fight.
Mhm.
And then Usyk went a couple of weeks later to the WBC convention, and he vacated the WBO title because he didn't want to be forced into the Wardley fight as a mandatory. And he said in a bunch of interviews to a bunch of people that were there at the convention that his fight that he wanted was to fight Deontay Wilder. Of course, I asked Shelley about that, and he said, yeah, that's something we're interested in. But we also, and I wrote this at the time, we're also discussing the possibility of a Derek Chisora fight. And now that's what's coming to pass. I mean, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days about this. I don't even know what to call them, but some outfit that was talking about Deontay against Usyk in San Francisco as part of this big thing to draw 150,000 people and a lot of other nonsense. But that's not happening. He's fighting Chisora. And now if he wins, then maybe he'll get the fight against Usyk. Or maybe if, who knows, maybe if Chisora wins, perhaps he gets a rematch with Usyk. You never know.
When you look at the stages of Chisora and Wilder's career, is this the perfect fight for both of them?
Well, from the standpoint that they're two older guys, they're two guys that are, still want to box, who are, in their 40s now. Deontay is now 40, and I think that Chisora, if I'm not mistaken, is 41. But they still have some desire to go at it. They get motivated by a fight against a guy with a name. Certainly, they both have good names in the sport. And at least, like I've always had the opinion, if you're gonna take an older fighter and you're gonna still put him in the ring, at least put him in the ring with a guy his own age, his own sort of experience level, his own, like, not don't feed him to the young guy. Do you know what I mean? To have the young guy destroy the older guy and make a name for himself. And that's just sort of that happens in boxing all the time. So for me, I'd rather see. I mean, I know that that's inevitable and that happens, and it's just part of the evolution of boxing careers that the young guy steps up and destroys the old guy and sort of takes a step over him to move up the ladder. But by the same token, there's nothing wrong with if two guys are still solid and looking to keep going, that they fight each other who are, in a similar situation. I mean, it's an even kind of matchup. They both have a lot of fights. Mm-hmm. They both have, tremendous amount of experience against a lot of top fighters. And, I think most people look at that matchup. I saw a lot of comments when I posted my story. It's on my Substack, Fight Freaks Unite. People saying they really like the matchup. If the two guys want to still fight, that'll be a fun fight. They kind of give Wilder a better chance about beating Chisora than they typically would have if he were to fight Usyk, which most people viewed as kind of a mismatch and frankly a fight that maybe Deontay didn't deserve. even though I had no problem personally, if Alexander Usyk as a champion who has fought everybody in various mandatories and big time fights wants to fight a big name like Deontay Wilder, he's at the point where he should have the option to do whatever he wants. He's earned that right, in my opinion. But if the Wilder camp opted for Chisora, okay, fine.
For me, Dan, the Chisora Wilder fight excites me more than the Wilder Usyk fight.
I understand that.
Do you agree with that? I just think that stylistically, when we look at the stage of their where they're at their career, I understand the Chisora Wilder fight. When Usyk was coming out and saying that he wanted to fight Wilder, I couldn't understand why.
I could.
Right? Can you just elaborate then?
Yeah, I mean, because Usyk he's motivated by big names, and so you look at the era that he's in. Besides himself, and this is before Usyk even became a heavyweight. This is still when he was, doing his damage and becoming the undisputed champion as a cruiserweight. The three biggest names in the heavyweight division for a period of time were, in no particular order, were Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, and Tyson Fury.
Yep.
Well, he beat Anthony Joshua twice and won the title and beat him in a rematch. He had two huge fights, including for the undisputed title against Tyson Fury. And he's more interested in having a name like a Deontay Wilder, who I know he respects, who's been a champion, who had was the WBC champion for 5 years, made 10 title defenses, has a legendary trilogy against Tyson Fury. And so for him, that was more interesting to him. To if I'm in a position where I can pick my opponent, I want to fight Wilder. He's got a great name. He's famous, as he said. He's got a good fan base. And, even though he may be diminished, he still has the possibility of landing that massive right hand. And so there is some element of danger. And so that appealed to Usyk, it seemed to me. And I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I had no problem with it. I just didn't understand. I don't know where I thought Usyk would go. I just didn't think it would be Wilder. You know what I mean? But we're getting it looks like we're getting Chisora Wilder.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. And again, I don't know if it's not like a done deal or anything as far as I know, but the sort of the word on the street, if you will, is that one of the opponents they're looking at now, since Usyk is obviously not going to be fighting Deontay Wilder, one of the names that I've heard come up is Andy Ruiz Jr., the former champion who obviously had the 2 fights with Anthony Joshua.
I read that on your article that you emailed me. Yep, I read that as well. Now, when you look at, you mentioned Wilder's big right hand, and he's still got that in the arsenal. No matter how old he is, how many fights he's lost lately, he's still got that big right hand. But when we look at Chisora's last 3 fights, he's got a big right hand as well, it seems now. He's got that big looping over right hand, which against a tall fighter works perfectly. Is this a case of whoever lands that right hand first wins the fight?
I mean, look, Derek Chisora has had a good chin. It's going to take a really good right hand probably to do the damage. But yeah, I mean, these guys they're not indestructible. Deontay has been stopped before. They're both have elements of danger in their game. But the crazy thing to me is that I look at where they are, and if you take a look at the recent fights that they have had, Deontay has been a little bit inactive. He hasn't fought for a while. His last fight was against a much lower level opponent. But if you take a look at Chisora, even though he's got way more losses and has been around for a little longer professionally, he's coming off 3 good solid victories. I mean, one of them was against a guy that Deontay had knocked out. He went the distance with. That was Gerald Washington. But if you take a look at the other fights, he upset Joe Joyce. That was sort of a significant win for him. I don't remember what the odds were in that, but I have to believe that Joyce was the favorite going into that fight. Yeah, and that was a really good fight. He looked pretty good in that fight. And then it comes back and he doesn't just beat Otto well, and he did so. And I thought, I wouldn't say emphatic, like he didn't get a knockout, but he beat him up, and not he was clearly the winner. Probably 7 rounds to 5 at worst, but really more likely it was more like 9-3 type of fight. Like he clearly was the winner of the fight. So you put those together back to back to back, at this later stage of his career, and he's done better in recent fights, let's say, than Deontay does. So I'll tell you one thing though, when I posted my article about that, I had a bunch of people who were boxing fans from the UK who were like messaging me, or like I got a couple of people that hit me up on my like direct messages on Instagram and stuff. Like, do you know the exact date, the exact location? I want to get a ticket. That's going to be a hell of a fight. People seem to like the match.
I do like the match. I do like the match. You just said all there that reference that Deontay, the losses, and a sort of low level opponent, and then Chisora, you broke down who he had fought his last 3 fights. Do you make Chisora the favorite going into this one then?
Yeah, I probably would make him the favorite. I mean, Deontay I love Deontay, but he looked absolutely terrible against Joseph Parker. That was a clear loss. He looked pretty bad and got knocked out pretty badly against Zhilei Zhang. He did come back and go to Wichita, Kansas in his last fight, which was back, what was it, in like, I don't forget what month it was, maybe like last June or something like that, or September. He got the win, got the knockout, scored some knockdowns, and actually didn't look terrible, like looked way better than he had in his previous fights, but that was not the type of opponent that Chisora has been beating. And so, yeah, the fact that he's going to go to the UK, where obviously Chisora, that's his home area, I probably would make Derek, at least a slight favorite in the fight. But I respect Deontay. He's going overseas. I mean, he fought in the UK once years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Ended the career of Aldi Harrison in 70 seconds with a massive knockout. And now he's going back to fight. He's got a lot of fans in Britain, I can tell you that. He's certainly well known there because of the Fury fights.
Definitely is well known over here, especially because of those, and your own words, legendary trilogy with Tyson Fury. Going on to Usyk then. Seems like there's talks with him and Dana White and Zuffa boxing. Your thoughts on that, and is that a good move for Usyk with the landscape of the heavyweight division right now?
I mean, it's a good move. Obviously, it's going to come down to money, like it always does.
Yep.
But it seems to me like the folks at Zufa are on kind of two tracks at the moment. They have their league where they're doing certain level of fights, not big name fights, not bad fights, don't get me wrong, but not super like A-level fights, if you will. But then when you make a move to sign a Jai Opataya and you make it clear to his team, like, we're not going to stand in the way of unification fights. And I say that because Dana White's entire philosophy in the build-up to the launch of Zufa has been, we're not going to play in the same sandbox with everybody else. We're doing our own thing. We're not going to recognize the organizations. We're not going to co-promote. We're not going to work with other promoters. And, I don't necessarily like that attitude, but that's their prerogative. I'm not like, if that's what they want to do, then they're entitled to do it. But when you sign a guy like Opataya, and that's been your philosophy, and Opataya in his first video introducing himself saying, here's the deal I just made with Zufa Boxing, and he starts talking about his desire to become undisputed and to unify the titles, obviously that means they're going to let him do that. Now, I make the point that just because a promoter says something doesn't mean that it's going to be the case. I mean, we've all heard a lot of promoters say things that aren't necessarily truthful, or that they change their mind. And so you're going to sign the talent. These fighters have aspirations to become world champions. They want to make big money, but they want to be champions of the recognized organizations, or in the case of Opataya, not only the IBF, but he's also the Ring Magazine champion, which Turkey Al Sheikh owns, which is obviously part of Zufa because they're the ones who are funding Zufa. The bottom line, though, is Alexander Usyk is not going to go sign, in my mind, with the Zufa Boxing if he can't defend the heavyweight championship of the world. Now, he also is the ring champion, so it makes sense that if you're going to go sign guys with titles, you're signing fighters that your partners in terms of the Saudis own that belt. So if they can get the right matchup, and I've also heard that Andy Ruiz has been talking to Zuffa also. So when I wrote about the prospect of the possibility of maybe an Usyk against an Andy Ruiz, I would imagine that's part of the fact that they both may end up with deals with Zufa Boxing. So how Zufa approaches the elite fighters is going to be very interesting. Dana White did do an interview that I watched with my old colleague and my pal Stephen A. Smith from ESPN on Stephen A.'s YouTube channel, where he talked about not only the startup of Zufa that they have launching this week, but he also talked about, look, when the bigger names become available, we're going to have conversations, and we're not just looking to take a backseat to anybody. So if there's top talent that becomes available, the way you build your roster into an elite roster is you go and you sign the best fighters in the world. If you can sign an Opataya, if you could sign an Alexander Usyk, that's a pretty damn good start, if you ask me.
Listen, I totally agree. I'm a massive fan of Jai Pattaya and a huge fan of Alexander Usyk as well. Dan, where do you sit? See, for me, right, I understand the one belt champion, having one champion in one division. It's like what the UFC do. But I kind of like piggybacking on what Eddie Hearn said. I like the champion versus champion scenario and becoming the undisputed. That, you know what I mean? I like the fact that we had Tyson Fury as a champion in the heavyweight, and then Alexander Usyk being a champion in the heavyweight division, and then you got champion versus champion to fight for that undisputed. I like that. I like the thought of that. Does that make sense? But and I do understand the one belt, one champion, and then you have to beat the champion. Where do
Well,
you sit on all this?
look, the one belt, one champion is a beautiful concept.
Yep.
Okay. I totally get it. There's one champion, there's only one world, so there should be one world champion. To me, it's an outdated sort of fantastical notion. Like I don't disrespect the concept, but in practicality, it makes no sense. Boxing is a worldwide sport, and if you just had one champion in each division, and guys are fighting, once or twice a year, nothing would ever happen. You gotta keep activity going. So while I appreciate the and a lot of people call me a purist, and I'm a purist maybe about some things, but I'm not a purist when it comes to the concept there should be one champion. Okay. So I have never had a problem with there being multiple champions. It gets a little bit unwieldy at times when now we're in an era where there are 4 recognized organizations, which I could live with. What drives me absolutely Looney Tune is when you've got those organizations and
I
then
know
they
you
start
do.
creating interim champions and all
Yeah.
the other nonsense, regular champions and champions in recess and all the other bullshit.
Silver and stuff like that.
No,
Yeah.
silver I got no problem with because that's like a regional thing. I'm talking about guys that claim to be world champions, whether you're an interim world champion or the world champion or the in recess champion or the champion, twice removed or whatever. So, but the concept of one champion, it doesn't work in boxing in my mind. So, to me, it was okay when it was something that was doable because then you'd have the champion fighting the number one contender, and the number one contender would have typically earned the position by beating some other top quality opponent. Now it sort of becomes champion versus champion, as you mentioned. So, well, look, one champion would be fine, but it's not practical. So, I'm okay with that. The way that the structure is now, as long as they could get rid of the extraneous bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with you, but like I say, I do like the champion versus champion fighting for the undisputed. I do like that. Now, what do you make of Tyson Fury return? It was probably yeah.
I am shocked. I'm shocked,
I was,
man.
I was gonna say you probably knew it was coming, but yeah, the big man has came out and said that he is coming back. He is going to make a return. He posts his training videos all the time on Instagram. I follow him, but he's definitely making a return this year. I just want to get your shot and
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw some stuff that they're talking about April. Spencer Brown, who works with Tyson as in terms of his management, talking about April. I heard Arslanbek Makhmadov as being a possible opponent. And listen, when Terrence Crawford announced his retirement, and I was asked by various folks about my thoughts, is he going to come back, and and do you think it's for real and all this? And I answered the question the following way, and it's not just about Terrence Crawford. When boxers announce their retirement, I take them at their word. But I also know that it's a possibility that they may, decide to change their mind. They go by 6 months or a year and they wake up and they just have that itch to scratch and they want to get back in training and there's an offer, or there's a good fight to come up, or there's money to be made. So I take them at their word. I don't think they're lying to us when they say they're retired. And the point I made is I believe them, except for Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, I mean, look, he's been a great fighter for a long time, but never once for any of his retirements I think it was legit. And once again, I'm proven right because here he comes. I mean, doesn't make him a bad guy. It just means, he retires the way normal people might change their socks.
well, do you see him becoming a world heavyweight champion again? I mean, this young crop coming through, these Fabio Wardleys, these Ajit Kabayals, the Moza Talmas, these are young, hungry, dangerous men. Do you see these sort of Tyson Fury's, maybe Alexander Usyk? I mean, he's probably got a couple of fights left. Usyk, he does what he wants now. But for Tyson Fury, he said he's going to be a world champion again. He's going to claim his crown. Do you think he can?
I think it's possible, but a couple of things about that. Number one, if he did come back and he didn't believe he could be heavyweight champion again, I'm not sure why you would bother to come back.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. I mean, that sort of drive is what makes these fighters great to begin with, is that belief that they can become the champion of the world. And while making money is always on top of the mind for most fighters, the glory is still a big part of it, and the crowds and the events and the whole thing. Can Tyson Fury do it? Well, number one, you got to get the opportunity. So right now, Alexander Usyk holds 3 of the titles. They would have to do, I guess, another fight, a third fight to get the opportunity. The Wardley fight, he is now the WBO champion. They are both involved with Frank Warren, so it's not like a fight that couldn't necessarily be made, but I'm not sure, what Fury's appetite is for that, and or what they're planning on for Wardley. So, it's a question. If he gets the matchup for a fight against a champion, is Tyson Fury capable of becoming a champion again? Yeah, absolutely. I know he lost his last couple of fights against Alexander Usyk, but it wasn't like he was out of his depths or anything like that. He competed. He gave Usyk probably the toughest fight of his career in their first fight. And if he's got the desire and he's in good shape, and there's no reason to think he can't still have a couple of good fights left in him. But whether he's going to get the opportunity, that will remain to be seen.
Definitely. And this boxing game's a fickle old game, isn't it? Anything can happen. Like I say it myself, for Fabio Wardley to be a world heavyweight world champion with no amateur experience and 5 white collar fights, as we say, is a story in itself. It's a movie in itself. So fair play. Like I say, the sport is absolutely crazy right now.
But and again, nothing against Fabio Wardley at all. Seems like a really cool guy. All credit to the story that he has, as you mentioned, with no amateur fights. But he kind of got the title in a way that's not the way you're supposed to get the title. They basically forced Usyk into the mandatory. He's at a certain position in his career where he didn't want to do the fight. There was never really a reason to have the interim title available anyway, because it wasn't like Usyk was not going to fight again. So, again, I don't disrespect what he did. He got the win against Parker, and that's all good. But I'd like to see him be able to fight at least one defense against a top quality guy. I have a hard time saying he's a champion. I view him as a title holder. Again, no disrespect, but I view there's a difference between being the real champ, like an Usyk, and being a guy that was able to, be in the right position to get a belt at the right time. There's a difference.
Yeah. A quick segue now. There's a couple of fights happening in Vegas. I don't know if you're going out there. The Zufa boxing's fight, and then obviously Eddie Hearn's got a fight out there with Andy Cruz. Andy Cruz had 6 pro fights?
Something like that. It's not a lot.
Not a lot, and he's gone for it.
They're going to make me look that up while I'm sitting here. But yeah, Andy Cruz, though, he comes into the pros as a, kind of like Lomachenko-ish in the sense that had such a huge 6-0, by the way, with 3 knockouts. Such a huge amateur career that and was a little older, when he turned professional because of his the fact that he was in Cuba and he couldn't go pro when he wanted to and had to escape his country. So between all the amateur fights and being 30 years old now, there wasn't a lot of time to waste. And he didn't really need, he wasn't a guy that needed 25 fights to become in a position to become to fight a top opponent. He was a super talented fighter. And so he was getting a shot against Matay, as you mentioned.
I mean, Matay, I'm pretty sure, again, you've probably got the numbers there, 20 plus fights and 0 losses, high knockout ratio. I mean, it's all well and good having the amateur experience. The pro game is a different sport compared to the amateurs. Longer rounds.
The rounds aren't longer.
I mean more rounds. Do you know what I mean? More rounds. That's what I meant. Sorry.
The fights are longer.
The fights are, yeah. For Andy Cruz, Lomachenko he had more hype coming out of the amateurs than Andy Cruz. You mentioned Lomachenko-esque. Do you envision, can you see him pulling this off against Muratalla? Because like I said, it's a dangerous fight.
I think Cruz, I haven't looked at the actual odds. I think Cruz is the favorite, put it like that. I don't know what the odds are. And nothing against Muratalla, good fighter. As you mentioned, a really good record, 23-0. Been a pro a while, but doesn't have that kind of amateur background, which is important. When you get to this level, you've done those reps so many times. In the amateurs, you fight all kinds of styles. You can't cherry pick whether you're fighting a tall guy or a fast guy or a puncher or a mover or a southpaw. I mean, you just go to a tournament and whoever you fight. And Andy did it against the best in the world in the amateurs for a very long time, for a powerhouse in Cuba. He's an extraordinarily talented fighter, Andy Cruz, and he's fought. He never had. None of the fights he's had as a professional were against nobody type, like soft touch ducks that, you sometimes see guys turn pro. Their first 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 fights are against complete stiffs. Andy Cruz, for a guy that had no professional fights, guy turned pro against Juan Carlos Burgos, who had fought in world title fights.
A 10-rounder as well, was it not?
Yeah, exactly. In a scheduled 10-rounder. So, in a couple of fights ago, he goes and he takes care of the knockout against Antonio Moran, who has had tremendous experience against a lot of guys. Omar Salcedo, again, not a great championship fighter, but a legitimate professional. Took him apart. Not a hard fight for him. Only had 1 loss going in. And then in the eliminator, when he beat up on Mishiro from Japan, he was not even as good as the other guys Andy had fought in his earlier fights. So, you know, I don't think he's not a guy that needed a ton of seasoning. They got him in position. He's got the shot now against Matay. And I believe Andy Cruz is the favorite in that fight. I believe Andy Cruz is going to win that fight.
Definitely. Now, I want to talk about next weekend. I know you've done an interview with Shakur Stevenson, and like I
No,
said,
Teofimo I spoke to.
oh, was it Teo? I thought it was Shakur. You said at the beginning. Now, okay, Teo. Yeah, the link for that interview will be at the bottom of the description. I don't know when you're posting it, Dan. That interview with Teo.
Yeah, well, so we're taping this. What day is today? Today is Wednesday.
Wednesday.
My interview with Teofimo will debut on our Big Fight Weekend podcast episode that will launch on Thursday night, Thursday late night.
This will probably go out before, so watch this interview, then go and check out the Teo interview. I don't know what to think about this fight, Dan. I can almost, when they've got two fighters like that, I can always see it being like a firefight. I can see Shakur wanting to make it a fight against Teo to win that title. But then I can also see it being a boring fight. Maybe both of them not wanting to engage a little bit. Maybe the two, I don't know. How do you see the fight? I'm stuck in the middle here.
Well, first of all, it's a high class matchup. You know,
Yeah.
whatever the way that it plays out in the ring, it's a high class matchup. These are both outstanding young fighters. They're both approaching their primes, or maybe early in their primes, if you will. Both have been champions in multiple divisions. Both guys were Olympians. They both have great records. They both fought top guys. Shakur is undefeated. Teofimo just has the one upset loss against Kambosos in a fight that he was dramatically physically compromised going into. They've been talking some shit with each other. They know each other. They both were with Top Rank for many years. They fought on the same Terrence Crawford undercards a couple of times. Like, this fight has kind of been, if you follow their careers and the way they were brought along, this fight was kind of inevitable. It's like when I was in, people can hear the interview for themselves. When I was talking to Teofimo, he said, yeah, he felt like this fight was inevitable. It's just happening maybe a couple of years before he thought it would. But it's a good matchup. I mean, they're going to be in a great arena. There's a lot at stake. Shakur is moving up to 140, where Teofimo is the lineal as well as the WBO champion. It's a really good matchup. How it unfolds, look, that's going to depend on, in my opinion, what type of style Shakur wants to employ. Is he going to come and stink it out like he's done before and just go home with the W, but everybody booing? Or is he going to come and he's going to try to fight the way he did when there was a lot of pressure on him to do so because of, remember back in the summer, Turkey talking, I don't want any Tom and Jerry fights and this and that. There was a lot of pressure on him to fight in a more entertaining style like he did against William Zepeda, and he did it. And he showed that he can go in there and mix it up, not be reckless defensively because he's a great defensive fighter, but that he can stand in the pocket and he can still make the guy miss. And that was a very crowd-pleasing performance, but with a superb amount of boxing from Shakur. Again, not reckless, even though there was some good action. So to me, it's going to depend, I think, on the way that Shakur approaches the fight. Teofimo, he fights the way he fights. He can box, but he also is offensive-minded, and I don't think that's going to change. So to me, the way that it's going to go is what style does Shakur come into the ring looking to use, and if it becomes a boxing match, will he be willing to change it up a little bit and maybe do make it a little bit more entertaining? We'll have to see. But I know one thing: both guys got a lot of speed. Both guys got a lot of desire, and these guys are, they're pound for pound caliber talents.
All right, you persuaded me. It's going to be a firefight. It's going to be.
I didn't say that. I mean, if you ask me, I actually think, regardless of the way that they fight, it probably will wind up being more boxing match than actual firefight. But that doesn't mean it's bad. I like, when it's that high level kind of matchup, that's not necessarily a bad thing if they box. Boxing is fine. It's running that pisses me off. It's backing up and not engaging and fighting off the back foot for 12 rounds. I got no problem if a guy boxes and is defensive minded, but you got to pick your spots and let some punches go. It's boxing. It's entertainment. Yeah. It's not just a running match.
Yeah, the fight that comes to mind with me is the BF Bivol fight. Both of them, the way they was sort of like Bivol wasn't running. You can see him punching off the back foot. He was trying to circle. That's the type of fight you can almost envision it being like. And as you say, we're purists in air quotes. I think, I can probably almost see it like that. I can almost see it being a chess match, but a very, very engaging fight at the same time.
That would be a great way if the fight goes like that.
Yeah, well, like I say, we can only wish, but that's our expert opinion, right?
Exactly.
But for Shakur though, going up to 140, Does the weight matter? Do you think that's a step too far? Because Teo is a big, well, like big shoulders.
You know,
Is that a step too far?
I don't think so at all. I mean, look, Shakur won his first world title as a featherweight. He has, steadily gone up in weight to, to 130, 135. If you take a look at the way he looks, I've seen the pictures of him in some of the videos. He looks strong. If you didn't know that he was a lightweight and that Teofimo had been now for the last bit at junior welterweight, you wouldn't really know, you couldn't tell the difference. They both look about the same size to me when I see them. So I don't think the weight matters. I mean, when you have the kind of talent that he has, it's not a bridge too far to go up to 100 from 135 to 140. In fact, if you ask me, not just in terms of this fight, but just overall in boxing history, and there's lots of guys that have moved up to try to win titles in different weight classes. For some reason, I've always viewed the jump from 35 to 40 as one of the easier jumps, where guys who are successful at 135 have found good success also at 140. There are a number of fighters that have done that have been champions in those weight classes. I don't think that's a big deal at all. I don't think it plays a factor in this fight whatsoever.
Well, Dan, I'm going to get your opinion on it since it is one of our own, Dalton Smith against Subriel Matias. I think it was maybe 10, 11 days ago out in New
Yeah.
York. I don't know how big a fight that was in the States.
It wasn't a big fight in the States at all. At all. No chance. I mean, as a boxing fan, I was excited to see it because I knew it was going to be a good fight. But it didn't register on the unless you're a diehard fan, it meant absolutely nothing in this country.
Well, Dalton Smith almost fought fire with fire against Subriel Matias. Were you surprised at the game plan? I mean, I probably wasn't the game plan. I think Dalton just fought fire with fire. But yeah, your thoughts on the fight?
I mean, look, we're in the beginning of the year, so there's a long way to go. But I mean, you want to talk about what may be the fight of the year. I don't think it's going to be the fight of the year, but I think that if we get to the end of the year and people are still talking about it, it could certainly be among the top handful of fights when we all come up with our list of the possibilities of the honorable mentions. Look, it was a tremendous fight, and I give Dalton Smith a lot of credit. He packed his bags. He came to fight in America. He wasn't fighting in Subriel Matias' hometown, but New York is a very Puerto Rican heavy market, and so he had the backing of the Puerto Ricans. And I know Dalton had a nice little cheering crowd of Brits that turned out for him, but certainly there was more Puerto Ricans in there. So, but he didn't strike me as he was unnerved by it at all. And he went out there, and like you said, he fought fire with fire. Most people would have thought that you're going to have to be a little more cagey against a big slugger and a brawler the way that Matias has shown, who's got such good punching power. But he beat him at his own game, basically. He fought him, and he knocked him out. I thought it was a great performance. It was a huge win. I thought that Eddie Hearn was not out of the realm when he said that for him and Eddie's promotional career, it was the biggest British road win that he's been a part of. And he mentioned two fights in particular when Darren Barker went to Atlantic City and defeated Daniel Gale for one of the middleweight titles. I was actually at that fight. Now that was a neutral kind of fight because Danny Gale was from Australia, but he still traveled across the pond to get the fight. And the other one he mentioned was the big win that Kell Brook had when he went to Carson, California, and defeated Sean Porter for the IBF welterweight title. But what he did to Matias, Dalton Smith, that's going to be a memorable fight for a lot of people for a long time because it was considered an upset. It was a tremendous action battle, and he got the job done in a way that nobody expected him to do. Now, if Dalton had went in there and maybe outboxed Subriel Matias and won, it still would have been a great victory, but it would have been like, okay, that if he was going to win, that was kind of the way you figured he would win. But for him to go in there and brawl the guy and knock him out, which is what Matias has been doing to everybody, that was a little bit of a surprise. But so, props to Dalton Smith. Is a big win, and I'd look forward to seeing him in some big fights because 140 pounds, including like the fight with Shakur and Teofimo, there's a lot of good matchups in that weight class.
Definitely, I agree. Dan, there's 3 minutes left on this Zoom interview. Have I missed anything? Is there anything you'd like to get off your chest? I don't know if I've missed any boxing news or anything like that. Have I?
I mean, you tell me, my man. This is your party, not mine.
Well, I've done my homework. I think that's all we need to talk about just now until the fights start rolling in. But yeah, Dan, as always, your Substack, your newsletter, just fire away. Where can they find it? And like I say, always at the end of the interview, everything that Dan says, the links are at the bottom of this interview in the description box. So please go and subscribe, like, whatever it may be. But Dan, just tell them everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the Substack platform. It's danrafael.substack.com. It's a newsletter, but it also lives as a website. So if you sign up for it with your email, the blast will come to your email. You can also sign up for a phone alert. And as I've said before, I mean, there are some elements that are for free, of course, but obviously this is how I make a living. So I appreciate all the folks that have subscribed and paid a very nominal fee for it, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And by the way, I just celebrated. I started it in 2021, so we just turned 5 years old. So I'm still going strong with it. I think was it 2020 or 2021, but the anniversary was in January. So I'm actually looking to double check. But yeah, it's been an amazing thing. I started in January 2021, and having no idea what it was going to become. And if I'm still doing it this long later, it's people seem to enjoy it. I'm thrilled about that. I've had no idea what to expect. It's been a total joy to do it.
Well, Dan, here's to the next 5 years then. And more, and more. Always a pleasure to speak to you, Dan. I always enjoy our interviews. And like I say, I'll probably, hopefully try and grab you next week if that's okay. And we'll talk more
Sure.
about Shakur and Teo. And remember, your interview with Teo is up on your fight.
It'll be up Thursday night.
Thursday night, just after this interview. This interview will be up Thursday as well. But please go and like and subscribe. Dan, as always, I appreciate you, my friend. And I'll catch you on the next one.
All right, Andrew. Appreciate that, my man.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.